Well, let's talk about the book.
Sure.
Not everyone listening would have heard our previous interview, although I would encourage them to go back and check it out. Yeah. It did do very well. But I think because there has been this bubbling movement of progressives into Bitcoin, my argument's always been the same. It's the most important book written for conservatives about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I stand by that argument. But just give people a bit of a TLDR, a bit of a reminder of why you decided to write this book, what the spark was.
Yeah. So if we go back, I know that this is true because I have a Google Doc where I created it. And I said, I said to my buddy, we should write a book about this because there's nothing in the space that addresses this, right? We need to write a book. So I started that Google Doc September of 2021. At the time, I was still head of my math department. So my work, like my fiat job, was just like all consuming. Didn't have time to actually like write a book. So I spent a long time just sort of thinking and doing bullet points and learning and reading as much as I could. Quickly became like the buddy of mine I offered. He said, "Oh yeah, let's write a book together." And then it became clear that I need to write this book by myself because this guy's pretty awesome, but he's not gonna. He's gonna be a super support for me. And he actually was the first person to edit it for me. But he was not into writing a book with me. So I wrote the book. The motivation is interesting, right? It's called A Progressive's Case for Bitcoin. And it's very clear to me, and maybe hopefully your audience will hear this. I did not write the book because I was trying to learn about Bitcoin and I was offended like as a progressive person, right? I was not like on a political level like, oh my God, like this is horrible, something has to be done. I wrote the book because I'm a teacher and I know that it is impossible to teach somebody a complicated, difficult concept if they're not comfortable. So I've been in a math classroom for my whole career, teaching people mathematics they don't want to learn. And if they're not comfortable or they don't feel safe or they're afraid of it, they're not going to learn from you. You cannot do it. And so when I looked at the resources that were out there and saying, all right, well, there seems to be a lot of name calling, a lot of assumptions about people on the left, a lot of rude sort of comments and assumptions going out there, people will not learn if that's the environment they're walking into. They just are going to dismiss it, refuse to. And my instinct is always to help teach people, educate people, help them learn. And I realized it was not possible in the environment that we had at the time. At that time, when I created that Google Doc, Troy Cross had not been on your show. Margot Paez had not been on your show. Alex Gladstein's first book, Check Your Financial Privilege, had not come out. Like, it was as if I was sort of swimming in this void alone, or it seemed like I was alone. And it was only sort of during the process of writing the book that I got to meet those people. All of a sudden, I remember being on the treadmill and all of a sudden there's like Margot Paez and I was like, holy shit, like there's somebody else, right? So like I got, through the course of writing the book, I got to meet people. That there is a community, like it is growing. It is important to have different voices. But when I started that Google Doc to write a book, which I never thought I'd actually finish, none of that existed in my mind, right? Like that world wasn't there. So I was trying to fill a void, and I think there is still a void to be filled. And that was the environment of starting the book, was like, hey, there's nothing out there like this, and I need to do what I can, right? What skills do I have to bring to the table to help? So that was the idea behind the book.
Well, we recognized it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Alex is great. We're huge fans of Alex Gladstein. I love the guy. I think he's a great person. Yep. We've had Anita Posh on the show. But what was happening is when we would have someone like Anita on the show, you would see the YouTube comments and it would be very critical of the left.
Yes.
Very, very critical of the left. A lot of people having to go at her. And then people would be writing us saying, accusing me of being a woke lefty liberal, whatever, which I'm clearly not to anyone with an intelligent brain.
Sure.
But I'd even reply to them and say, okay, let's go through our shows.
Yeah.
Libertarian from the right, libertarian from the right, maybe centrist, one from the left. It would be like 1 in 20 interviews would perhaps be someone from the left.
Yeah.
And so we recognize that if we didn't help and support a push from the left, even though, by the way, let's just put it out there, Bitcoin is politically neutral.
Correct.
It's a politically neutral tool.
Yes.
But you have to meet people where they are to help them explain things. And I think by doing that, you bring people together.
Right.
But anyway, we recognize that. So me and Danny just made this conscious decision. We're going to try and support and bring, I mean, we put it out there publicly. Anyone from the left wants to come on the show, let us know. We'll fly in. We did a whole bunch of shows.
Yeah.
Then obviously we heard from you as well. I can't remember the order of things.
Sure.
But we knew this was a really important problem to solve because it was self-defeating for people who are conservative to almost only see the conservative arguments for Bitcoin.
Right.
Because, like, I think it was you who said to me is, Elizabeth Warren won't be convinced by a Texas Republican why Bitcoin is good.
No.
But she might be convinced by Jason Maier.
Right.
Or her staffers might be.
Exactly.
And so we knew it was an important thing for us to become part of. And, you know, we were so fortunate that Alex has been doing a great job. You decided to write a book. You know, Troy decided to start, you know, becoming public. Margot came. Oh, and everybody else. It was, I think, it was just this thing bubbling up around us. But I think it's been great, and I think it's working.
And I find two types of people who don't agree with me politically. Right? There are people who do not agree with me politically. They say, "All right, I'm right. I'm libertarian." But what I think you're doing, I think what you're doing is great for the space. And then there's the people who are just sort of like,
Go fuck yourself.
Right. Well, I mean, I went on your show, Peter. I didn't have if you remember, I didn't have a Twitter account before I went on your show. The very first.
Well, you did. Didn't you have like 200 followers or something?
No, I showed up the morning of that first interview. I had 30 followers. That's what I had. So one of the first tweets I ever got after appearing on your show was, quote, "You look like you got hit in the face with a sock full of shit," was the first, that was my introduction.
Welcome to Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that was, so you have people like that. And it's really what your motivation is. Do you want money for everybody that will be a global force on a global stage to help people and to change the monetary system? Or do you want to progress, to advance your conservative ideology and make it so all liberals are poor and like can't participate in the new monetary system? And there's people out there who just want to like squash anything that is,
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I don't think they just want to make liberals poor. I think what they're doing, if they do, they're actually also making conservatives poor. Because if they're holding back Bitcoin, they're holding back everyone. And that's the key point. It's like, you need to understand this. Money for everyone. As you, I couldn't word it as eloquently as you, but this is money for everyone, and you have to put that before ideology. And
it's just it's an example of just one first order thinking, right? Like, oh, if only the people that agree with me are into Bitcoin, then I'll be rich and powerful, and then everyone I disagree with. They're not realizing they're just holding back adoption to something that actually is useful and is going to grow one way or the other. So do you want to spend time convincing somebody that they're wrong about the climate or that they're wrong about Bitcoin? Because you can teach them that they're wrong about Bitcoin and get them into the tent and explain things to them without having to call them names and say, well, you're, a climate hysteric and you're an idiot and you don't understand anything. You don't need to do that. There's a perfectly reasonable argument if you care about the environment to support Bitcoin, and it's laid out in the book. Many other people are making that argument too. You don't need to call names in order to prove your point. Get people, what do you care more about? Do you care more about Bitcoin or the fact that some people don't agree with you about the environment or something, Like, what do you care more about?